Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Good Enough Mums Club podcast, where sometimes being good enough is best.
Just before we get started, we do swear a lot on this podcast. So if you're listening with little ones, you may want to wait until later to catch up.
How will I ever be good enough? When will the loneliness fade? When will it fade away? Why does it have to be so tough? Hard as I try, I'll never be good enough.
My name is Emily Beecher.
And I am Jade Samuels, and we are the hosts of the Good Enough Mums Club podcast.
Every week, we'll initiate a mum into the club and explore the complexities and realities of modern motherhood.
You can join the club or find out more about the musical or future episodes of the podcast by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, searching Good Enough Mums Club.
And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, rate and review wherever you listen. So in this episode, I am so excited that we get to talk to someone who is a best-selling author with her book On Being Human, an inspirational workshop and yoga leader. Obviously, she's a mum, but she's also a dear friend. Welcome, Jen Pastiloff.
Jen was an absolute delight to talk to. Honestly, I left that conversation so empowered and happy, and she was so humble and giving and kind. Let's get into it. Hello, Jen. Hello, Jen. How are you?
I am well, thank you, here in Los Angeles. How are you?
I'm all right here in Birmingham. Very, very different geographical locations.
I miss it, though. I spend a lot of time in England, and I was actually meant to go this weekend, and due to this global pandemic, I'm not. And so I wouldn't mind being over there, actually, at all. I love it.
The weather has been incredible. Usually we have lots and lots of rain, and we've had so much sun.
We've had almost LA weather for a few days.
well, I've never been to Birmingham, truth be told, but I've been to London. Yeah, it's, we're pretty spoiled.
Right, we're going to kick off with a little round of Would You Rather, and we're looking for quick fire one-word answers. I mean, no one else has gave them Jen Pastiloff, so don't feel pressurized, but that's what we are looking for.
Yes, we'll see if I'm up for the challenge. Go for it.
Would you rather clean up poop or clean up puke?
Fuck you guys. Poop.
Fair enough.
Do you feel more empowered when you are wearing red lipstick or hoop earrings?
Hoop earrings! Oh, I'm not wearing them.
Same.
Dude, I'm never not wearing my hoop earrings. Hoop earrings are my identifier.
I've said when I get married, I'll be wearing big gold hoop earrings.
Yes.
If anyone's got an issue, that's on them. I love it.
Okay, you have to watch a Disney film 5 times a day, every day, forevermore. What film are you watching?
Girl, I'm going to be taking my hearing aids out. It doesn't matter.
Love it.
Okay, would you rather have a sleep in or a nap at some other point during the day?
Shit. Nap.
Oh, I'm so jealous of people that can nap. I can never nap.
That's just weird. You and I are going to have to break up.
I know, I'm sorry. I would love to nap. I think it's just everything's, sleep is so medicated for me. Favorite karaoke song?
Don't stop believing. That's at my retreats, that's what we do. So I gotta go with that, cliche as it is.
It's not cliche, it's glorious.
London or LA?
London. Did you say LA? Your accent made it sound like ally.
Yes.
And I was like, I've never been there. I've never been to LA. London, but grass is greener, folks. I'm in LA right now. So but London, yeah. All
right. We saw you were contemplating something on Insta recently. Bangs or no bangs?
I got to say no bangs. I know it's supposed to be one answer, but there's a thing about me, guys, dear listeners. I have this world's smallest forehead. And growing up, I always heard having a large forehead is a sign of beauty. So naturally, I was like, okay, I'm a troll and I'm ugly because I have a small forehead. But in order for me to have bangs, you'd have to be really, really short. So I'm gonna say no bangs. Yeah, because I have a really small, tiny forehead. Now that I pointed it out, you're gonna be like,
we're gonna be staring at your forehead for the rest of the podcast.
Well, like Emily, look how, see, you're a sign of beauty. You have a really long big forehead.
So yeah, well, I was always told that it wasn't a sign of beauty, so we should have swapped.
Damn
soothsayers.
You always want what you don't have in life, don't you? This is it.
Can you pee in peace?
No.
Yeah. Neither can we. Join the club you're in.
I mean, I'll say pee's a little easier. Pooping, not so much, because it's longer and it's like you count like by the 5, 4, 3. By the time you're at like 2, there's Charlie's in the room, the bathroom.
Yes. And it's worse when they're like, but I need to use the toilet. And you're like, oh.
The moment you sit down.
Well, no, my son doesn't do that. He just comes and sits down and I go, are you just waiting for me? Yeah. Just watching me? Well, I can't poop with someone in the room. You can? He's like, yeah.
That's so cute.
Okay. What is the first word you think of when you think of the word mum?
Home.
Oh, that's a gorgeous one.
That's a nice
I
one.
said tired.
but it's interesting. I mean, I wasn't thinking of like I was really thinking of like my son, you know, how he feels toward me. Well, I think, although he said, I hate you the other day, and I'd never heard that come out of his mouth. Where you even learn the word hate, but generally, yeah, home.
So we're going to kick off with our main questions now then, Jen. This is like not it's serious, but honestly, we're normally doubled up pissing ourselves laughing. So don't take it too seriously.
I'll try.
What was your journey to becoming a mum like?
Ooh. My journey to becoming a mom was really, you know, I want to say complicated, but that feels too easy because I feel like probably everybody feels that way. I was so afraid. I find all these little notes I used to write to myself, like in my workshops, which Emily has been, I asked people to write, what are you afraid of? And the biggest thing I always wrote was have a baby. And then right under it, I'd write not have a baby. You know, having lost my father when I was only 8 years old, that's a whole other podcast episode, but I had so much with abandonment issues and with, you know, I thought the age of death was 38. That's how old my dad was. And my career didn't really start until I was 35. And I didn't think I'd be able to pull it off. I didn't think I was going to have kids. And at 38, which for me was not the age of death like it was for my father, I started to listen to the world telling me, you know, if you want kids, you better start trying. You're going to regret it. You know, you're married. Why don't you have kids? And so even though I didn't think I wanted kids, I told my husband one time, I said, you know, let's just not be safe. One time, and I got pregnant. And at this very same time, yes, fertile myrtle over here. At this very same time, I was weaning very slowly off my antidepressants. So quite literally, the day that I was like fully off meds, I find out I'm pregnant. So I felt like, you know, my brain was going bananas. Let's just call it that. And I found out I was pregnant. I was 38 and I did not want to be. I wrote, you know, I really was like, I'm not ready. I was weeping. And it turned out to be ectopic, which was complicated because there was grief and relief, right? And of course, you know, there was a part of me that was like, I caused this, but I know better. I didn't just by not being sure I wanted it. The point of this story really is that I thought at age 38 that this sort of clarity or deep knowing or like jolt would come. You either want to be a mother with 100% knowing or you don't. And I turned 40 and I still did not have that clarity. And second time I said to my husband, you know, let's just not try. So second time only, he didn't pull out pregnant. And this time was different. I wasn't excited when I found out I was pregnant, but I was like, okay. And then they thought there was something wrong with the baby, that he was going to have a genetic disorder. And it really wasn't until we found out he was okay that I started to be excited and really realized I wanted it. And I'd say I was about 5 months pregnant. And now, by far, it's every single day I pray. And I was never a big prayer, but like, thank you. I almost missed this. There's nothing that makes me happier. The greatest love I've ever known And I'm just glad. I'm glad because I came really close to missing it. You know, I just wasn't one of those people that knew like, I want to be a mom no matter what it all costs. So I have one son and he's 4.
Oh, and he's gorgeous.
He's gorgeous and hilarious, and he's addicted right now to games. You know, we're in a farm. You know, he literally like 12 hours a day. I feel like the worst mom in the world, but it's like right now he's on Roblox, and I don't even know what this is. It's like he doesn't play the games. He watches other little kids play the games who are probably getting paid like $10 million. So, but yeah, it was a tough journey filled with a lot of fear, but I'm here. And he's here.
I love how you've embraced it as well, because I remember in 2014, you were still like, ooh, I don't know, I think, weren't you? When we met at the retreat in Vermont, you were still in that fear
because
place.
I had the ectopic.
Yeah.
And I didn't, and I thought, and at that time I was probably 39, and I thought, how do you not know? I'm married. I'm not, how do you not know? And that's something I really want to talk about more. It's okay, dear people listening, if you still don't know. It's okay if you're not, you know. I used to envy those people who were so clear they did not want to be a mom. I do. I envy that. Like, you know, great. Or and then I feel bad for people who know without any question that they do want to be a mom and they can't. They don't end up, you know, so. But yeah, I was really ambivalent, and so I'm just really grateful. I don't take it for granted. I don't. It doesn't mean I don't get annoyed with him, people.
No, but
that doesn't mean he's not a little pain in the ass. But he's delicious.
But he's your pain in the ass.
Exactly,
and that's the important thing. No, I think there's something though in there about not being sure. You'd weighed it up. You'd really thought about it before you did it. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Because you'd seem to have really made...
Yes, I would say for other people, I would have to be honest with you and say that absolutely was not me. Mine was really like, I say I'm Jewish, but mine was kind of like this Jewish guilt. Like, what if I get to the end of my life and like, at least I'll be able to say, well, we did not try. I didn't really think I would get pregnant. It was really, in my book, I talk about this moment when I saw Wayne Dyer, who was one of my great spiritual teachers, right before he died. And he said to me, I can't remember, do you have kids? And I said, no, I had an ectopic. I don't think I'm going to, though. And he whispered in my ear, it's not up to you anyway. And I rolled my eyes. God bless him. I love him. But I rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, God, he's so woo. I love him, but whatever. Yeah, it is up to me. It is up to me. And then when I got pregnant with Charlie, there was just a lot I thought about. Like, I really let go. No, I didn't weigh it. I didn't like think about, I really was just like, my husband didn't pull out. We got pregnant. I'm like, well, I'm going to embrace the not knowing. It wasn't a thought out thing at all. And had it been, I don't think he'd be here. Or had I had to go through IVF or any of that. And that's why I'm so grateful he's here. It was like, I know I'm really blessed. And I sometimes hold back because I know people struggle with infertility, but like it was so easy that there was part of me that was like, okay, Wayne was kind of right.
I have to give it to him, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as Emily said before in a previous recording, she's convinced we have the babies that we're supposed to have. And I think that's such a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, I think we get the kids.
As Wayne said, we think we're in control, but we're fucking
not,
let's be honest.
Greatest lesson, I think, of us being humans. You know, I say to Charlie, and Wayne taught me this. He taught me, like he wrote it in his books and stuff, and I'm all, he taught me over coffee. But we did, by the end of his life, we were friends, so that's pretty remarkable. But you know, he would always say, your children choose you. So every single day, without fail, since Charlie's been born, I say, thank you for choosing me to be your mommy.
Yeah.
I wasn't raised in that way. My mother never said that. I never thought of it. I never, until adulthood, thought like I chose my parents. But
because I think when you're a kid, you think, God, I would have chosen different parents, right?
Yeah, Emily, Wayne's story, he used to tell, you know, one thing I love is that I would go to hear him all the time, and he would say the same things all the time, and I didn't care. So when people came back to my retreats, as you did twice, I used to get insecure because I repeat myself, and my husband always goes, well, Wayne Dyer does. And I think it's so true because like as humans, we need repetition, and we need,
Completely.
Things land in a different way. But he used to say one of his daughters, Serena, who's a friend of mine, he would go, well, you chose me. And she'd go, well, I must have been in a rush.
Brilliant. I love that.
I'm sure if you ask the girls right now during lockdown, they would be like, we're not sure why we chose
yeah, I know. I think lockdown has put that relationship under a bit of a magnifying glass.
Well, with everyone, not with our
exactly,
kids, right?
exactly.
My husband and if my husband and I stay married, I'm going to be like, I get a medal. we will, but it's been,
Yeah, it's hard. What do you think are the biggest expectations that are on you as a mother?
That's a great question. There's so many gender norms still that get me so angry. Predominantly I'm the breadwinner, and I don't want to throw my husband under the bus. He's such an amazing human, but there's still so many times that I catch him, and I catch men doing this thing where I feel like it's almost like he thinks he's doing me a favor, or like watching Charlie. I'm like, no, you're not watching him. He's your son. So I think there's still an expectation that the mom does more.
Yeah.
And I don't mean bringing income in, because I do that, ladies. I'm talking about I'm still supposed to be, and I'm not that domesticated person. I'm really like, if I was rich and I had my way, I would order out every night. I'd get a cook. But like, what's for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to make? There's still these, expectations that the mom is the primary parent and caregiver, and one who makes the doctor's appointments. And there's so much about that frustrates me. I'm like, yes, I'm a feminist, but why? We both are his parents. Why is it? And I'm not talking about if you're a single mom. I'm not. But there's so much.
It's the emotional workload, isn't it? All that stuff that you have to carry in your head about, like you said, doctor's appointments or play dates or who eats what, like so much stuff in your head you're supposed to carry around on your own.
Yeah. And it's really this subtle thing, but even when I don't, it's like the slight resentment or the like I said before, like he's doing me a favor somehow. And that's fascinating. And that's cultural. That comes from, back, my husband's 50. So it's was just different the way he was raised. Yeah, and I'm like, no, we're equal partners, and period. Yes, I fed him on my boobs for a long time. And there's something to that. And that, so when he's younger, yes, I'm responsible for feeding him and really giving him life. But I think most things still fall upon the mom. And whatever it is, when you think about like a kid's behavior or something, it's like, well, what's the mom do? It's like always like somehow the mom is responsible for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
I was going to say, I think that's been times by 1,000 during lockdown as well. I don't know about in America, but the responsibility for children's caregiving, their education, their everything has fallen on the shoulders of women that are also doing jobs. And it's so frustrating that men aren't doing the same or have the same whatever on them during this pandemic. That's really, really pissed me off.
I know. I mean, it is, it's there I think are few and far between. There are men, and things are shifting perhaps a little bit, but of this, like, okay, like let's say I'm the breadwinner, which I am, the primary one, then you primarily do the work at home. I mean, I can't do it all. I just can't.
Yeah. And
it's absurd. I really, it's like, we don't live in the 1950s or the 60s or the 70s.
No.
No. Here we are, and we're still dealing with a lot of the same old-fashioned mores and beliefs and rules.
Do you think that we also, I sometimes feel like I make a rod for my own back with this, in that I do just keep doing it. I kind of keep perpetuating it. So I just keep doing it and I keep doing it well. So why would anyone want to take that off me because I'm doing it well?
Yes. And it's interesting because I think, you know, a lot of that is for me at least. I'm used to having had my dad die so early. I like became the caretaker and I am responsible for everyone. So there's a part of me that feels like no matter what, I'm responsible for everyone. And so a lot of it comes down to like, Emily, you know, this mantra I say all the time, I am worthy to receive. And that's like, as a mother, as a, you know, as a woman, it's like, I am worthy to receive, be it help, be it support, whatever. I don't have to do this all on my own. I do not have to carry it all on my own. But yeah, some of it's our own doing. Ask for help, receive it.
That's the thing though, isn't it? And that mantra is amazing, Jen, because I do think there is this thing that women are expected to not ask for much, are we? We're seeing in the world that we're not supposed to want much. We're not supposed to want to be someone's mom and beautiful and work hard and feel sexual and feel desired and feel fulfilled and feel shit and not give a fuck. We're not supposed to be multifaceted and many dimensional. And it's quite sad. I do agree with you 100%.
But that's why, for me, community, friendships, things like what we're doing right now, this podcast are really important because I think the more we talk about it, and, you know, I really live my life this way of like lifting each other up and reminding each other who we really are. Because if we're in a vacuum, if we're by ourselves, and especially, you know, during this time in a pandemic, it's easy to forget.
What's something about motherhood that you never expected?
So much. Oh my gosh. So the love I feel for my son, and I don't say this a lot, you know, on social media. I know I share a shit ton and everything, but I don't, like, you've never heard me post or say, maybe on a podcast like this, you know, it's the best thing I've ever done, or it's a love like I've never known, because I'm so sensitive to, like, my best friend. She always wanted a child and she didn't have one, and that's, those kind of comments are triggering, and so I'm very sensitive about saying stuff like that. And I don't ever want to send the message that in order to really know love, you have to have a kid, because I think that is such bullshit. Yeah, but people say that stuff. But the love I feel for my son, I remember my sister said something to me a long time ago, and it struck me in such a way that I never forgot it. And she said, I feel like when you became anorexic, which was when I was 17, she said, something broke inside of you. And she was so right. And my son, I feel like, healed that part of me that I didn't know I had anymore. And the love I feel for him, it's such a, and I think you guys know, it's like, I almost like, you know, you want to eat them. And and I know a lot of people say that. And I think that's just a primal thing. It's like that, but it's just, it overwhelms me. I say to him, Charlie, do you ever love mommy so much you feel like your heart's going to explode? And he looks at me and goes, no. But yeah, you know, I had never felt that kind of love before. That, and the joy, I don't know, joy is not necessarily something that comes easy for me. It's, you know, I'm not one of those people that's like always smiling, quite the opposite. And so the joy my son brings to my life has been probably the greatest gift of my life. And the laughter, I guess that falls in the same category of joy.
It's nice to be reminded of that, right? It's nice to be reminded. I don't know, it's something that takes you outside of yourself, isn't it? In such a sort of primal way.
Yeah. And just like, you know, if you really pay attention to the things they say and whatever it is, it's just that there's so much joy. And I know, and everyone's like, yeah, wait till they become a teenager. But I don't necessarily think it has to end.
No, I mean, we've got preteens, and don't get me wrong, they frustrate the fuck out of us on a daily basis. But you see so much joy from a different perspective. It's like every single time they're going through a new phase in development, you get to fall in love with that new person and that new development in that person's life. And I almost celebrate it. It's like, I'm like, oh, I wonder what this phase of it's going to be like. Like we're going away to Portugal tomorrow, and she's 10, so she's very much preteen, and this is the first holiday where she won't be so much into dancing on the floor, on the ground, and she'll be too cool for a lot of stuff. But I'm quite looking forward to seeing what a holiday with a child that's too cool will be like.
And each phase, you know, I remember when he was 1 and I was so sad it was going to end, and then 2, but so far each phase is so beautiful.
It is, yeah.
Another thing I will say is by far my very favorite thing about motherhood, or maybe not about motherhood, but I don't know how to categorize it, but it was breastfeeding. I loved it. It took a minute in the beginning. I had to have a lady who came over, and but I loved it. And I really wish I wrote more about it, because when I stopped breastfeeding, I went through postpartum, not after I had my baby, but when I stopped breastfeeding, I mean, I'm talking like I wanted to die. And I was like, why doesn't anyone talk about what? And for me, I think, I'm very open about it. I'm on antidepressants. And a really interesting thing for me about being pregnant was it was the best I ever felt in my life. Had I known that, I would have gotten pregnant a long time ago. I think a lot of it was like my hormones were balanced out and I wasn't boozing it up and all various things, but the hormones. So when I stopped breastfeeding, I think, a lot of people were like, oh, I know it's this connection, but it wasn't, it really felt chemical. It was like the hormones in my body went haywire and I got so depressed. And I still actually like grieve it all the time. I remember when the lactation person, I don't remember what you call him, but she came over and she brought her son. I swear he was like 5 or 6, but he was very tall. And he was like, Mommy, can I have some yibby? He didn't even call it boob. And he crawled up, and Charlie was like 8 weeks old or something. And he crawled up on his mom and started nursing. And I was so judgy in my head. I was like, okay, that's weird. Okay. And I remember thinking, like, once my son can ask for what he wants, and now I think, oh my God, like he's 4. Obviously, we had a stop when I think he was about 1.5 years, but I was like, I still get it because I loved it.
And the hormone thing is crazy. I remember someone telling me, I remember my psychiatrist with my postpartum, she said to me, oh, wait till you hit 3 years postpartum and you'll feel a change in your body. And I was a bit like, okay, yeah, whatever. And like, yeah, you hit 3 years and the hormones have pretty much at that point flushed out of your body. And I felt like
nobody told me that, I wish, I guess. And when I say I wish I wrote more, I do wish I wrote more about like that time when I couldn't get out of bed. And like, I was so, it was like, I was like, oh, this is postpartum. But I don't ever remember reading that. Yeah, do you? You hear about postpartum when you have a baby, but not necessarily when you stop breastfeeding.
Well, you can get postpartum up until your youngest child is 4 years old. That's the stats on it.
Wow. So yeah, wow. I didn't know that either. I mean, it makes sense. It does make sense. And, but boy, breastfeeding was definitely, so back to your question of what surprised you, that I had no idea. My mom did tell me she loved it. And I remember my mom said it like, it reminds me of taking a Valium. That's what my mom was saying about when she breastfed. And I know, but the same, it's like my eyes would roll in my head. I loved it on so many levels. Like it was so relaxing, the connection. And I had no idea.
I love breastfeeding and I'm contemplating getting pregnant again to breastfeed. What is one of the reasons? I loved it. I loved it. It's just so, and again, I don't talk loads about this because of the triggering thing, because so many of my family members couldn't breastfeed. Yeah. They struggled with breastfeeding, so many mums, and I feel so bad for them. But I loved it, and it was just so, to hear that, Jen, it made me go,
well, that's why
it was so
that's
amazing.
Why a podcast like this is it's a safe space, because we know, like, for example, my friend who doesn't have kids, or that would be painful, she's not going to listen to this. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel comfortable saying all the things that I don't normally walk around announcing, out of sensitivity for other people. So
no, it was incredible. But also, I know it's incredible, and I know I had a great time. And I think we should encourage women to breastfeed, but I'm a huge advocate as well for if it's not working, do not fucking beat yourself up. Let it go.
Oh God, yeah.
I don't know about in America, but in England, they make you feel so shitty about yourself for not breastfeeding. The NHS do, and I love our NHS, but so many mums I know have had an issue with that when they've decided not to.
I see. Can we just talk about the fact that even if you do it in the beginning, your nipples still bleed like hell, and it hurts so much to start. Like you have to get the latch right. You have to get the baby in the right place. Like there's so many things you have to get right. So even if I loved it, but in the beginning I was like, literally my nipples are bleeding.
But you forget. Yeah. That's the thing, right? You forget. I mean, that's why I wish I write down more things, because I'm like, oh, I forgot how, for me, it wasn't even the bleeding. It was the shame. And I'm like, why the fuck can I do this? This is the most basic primal thing. Why? And I'm a failure. I mean, and that's so common. I hear women all the time saying that. It's like how bad we feel when we can't breastfeed. And you're right. Like whatever, fed is best, right? That's what they say, fed is best. I think it's getting better now, and I think a lot of it is because of social media, because there's so many messages of like, just feed your kid however you're going to feed your kid. We had to stop because you guys are inspiring me so much. I'm like, wow, I have really a lot to say about motherhood, but we had to stop, and I regret stopping so early. I mean, even though it's not so early, but because we live in a 1-bedroom apartment, we share a bed still, folks, and I was home all day. I don't have a traditional job. And so my son had no boundaries. So he was on me like a fly on shit. He was on me literally 24 hours a day. And I would get judged a lot by my friends. And I understand. They're like, Jen, you got to teach this kid. And it was kind of impossible. Like I couldn't even be near him without. And so I envied people who had like boundaries or had a room for their kid, because like they'd go, they put their kid down, they'd nurse, they go to bed. But because he was in the bed with me, it was like all night. He was on my boob and all day. And so I had to stop because of that. And that's a bummer, because I probably would have gone until he was like 3.
Yeah, I stopped because I broke up with my daughter's dad and I wanted a sex life again. If I'm going to be really honest with you, I was like, I kind of want my boobs back for sex because I'm not going to have it with her dad. Yeah, I had my daughter at 24 and I didn't have I knew I wanted to have sex again with somebody else, and I didn't have the confidence to have sex with someone that I wasn't that emotionally attached to and get breast milk all over him. Maybe I wouldn't give a shit.
You never
now.
know.
I'll be honest with you.
In our life now, you might be like, whatever. But the weird thing for me is I stopped breastfeeding and I still made milk like 2 years later. You know, I'm very big breasted, but like I was like, okay, I think I was born to breastfeed, because I literally hadn't even nursed him in a year at least, and it was still just like tons of milk in there.
I was like that when I had to stop, because of the postpartum psychosis meds. So I had to sort of stop quickly. And so I was just like milk for days, and I donated for as long as I could. And then it was like,
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we had a great milk bank where we were, so it was really easy. But yeah, then it just eventually I just stopped. Jen, I wanted to ask you about something, because you do in your workshops, and I swear to God, this has been the most life-changing phrase that I have ever heard, and it plays in the back of my head constantly. And that is,
I got you.
No, it's, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Where did that come from?
Yeah, living a life out of fear. I mean, and what's so fascinating is that, you know, people, I love the dichotomy between how people see you and like how you see yourself, or what's really true, whatever that means. So for example, people look at me and they say, you're the most fearless person I know. I'm like, are you really? I mean, I've been in the same apartment almost 18 years. I am like queen afraid all the time. And all my life, until very recently. I mean, even having Charlie, it was like, that's why when you said like it was thought out, it wasn't. There's so much fear. I lived a life of fear, you know. Everything was fear. And so now, you know, in my 40s and my late 30s, I really started to think about, what if I wasn't afraid? Or the way that I think about it more now is, what if I was afraid and I did it anyway? Because what I've come to realize at this point is that the fear doesn't necessarily go away. It changes shapes, you know. So things I was afraid of 10 years ago, I'm not afraid of anymore. But I think about that, how much I look back in my life and I think about how fear stopped me with everything. And it makes me sad, and I don't want to be sad. So I don't want to in 30 years look back and go, oh, I didn't write another book because I was afraid. I didn't ever leave that apartment because I was too afraid.
Yeah.
So I really like to think about that. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then it's like, well, I would do this, and I might still be afraid, but I'm going to do it anyway.
I'm really working on that with Maisie, because she is very worried about what other people think at this point in her life. And so we have this whole do it scared thing that we're working on together.
Love it.
And sometimes that's like, we went parasailing when we were on holiday last time, and she literally sat in the boat on the way out there going, well, we're going to die. We're just going to die. We're going to die. I love you, Mom, but we're going to die. We're just going to fall to our death. I was like, we won't fall.
Did she do it?
Did it
in the end? Yeah. Okay, great.
We did it in the end.
And she didn't die. But Emily, that's actually a really great teaching thing, because you can keep coming back to that. I don't know if I said it when you came to Vermont, but one question I ask people all the time is, can you think of a time in your life when you felt like you were in so much pain or fear, you felt like you were going to die? Whether it was like literally when you were in the hospital, or if it was because of heartbreak, which we've experienced. Like I've literally thought I'm going to die. And then I go, but here you are, not dead. And so you can remind Maisie, it's like, remember that time you said 800 times, Mommy, we're going to die. And you did it. And here you are, not dead.
Yeah.
And it's just like this great reminder. It's you're not dead.
Yeah. And I think
it might feel like
we almost need to like build up a database, right? Like I'm equally the same. I hate doing things if I'm not going to be perfect at them. But you kind of need to build up a database of all of the things.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I call it your toolbox.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And at what is she, 11? At 11, you're building it.
But yeah, I want her to I don't think we should stop just because oh my God, if I stopped just because I was scared, I wouldn't do anything.
It's completely. Not one thing I always say in workshops, it's because people can be very literal. It's like, you're not suggesting that we go put ourselves in harm's way or do stupid things. It's just that do our best not to let fear be the boss of us. So like if Maisie had done that, she would have sat in the boat.
Yeah.
And maybe you would have you wouldn't have like forced her to go parasailing. I don't know. But she would have missed that. She would have missed the fun of it and also the lesson in it.
And she didn't die. And she didn't have a massive parenting fail.
Yay.
I think we've kind of touched on it a little bit already, but what stereotypes about yourself do you see in the media that you don't, I don't want to say hate's such a strong word, that you dislike?
I think one thing is, and maybe this isn't a bad thing, but just how people think I have it so together, or maybe I just need to listen to them more and be like, I do have it really together. I think also maybe some people think, this is another thing that I think I need to listen more, maybe learn how, but people think I'm like way more wealthy than I am. Even though I share my apartment very openly on videos, but because, I wrote a book and it was a bestseller, etc. And people have no idea that writing a book doesn't make you money, unless you're like, Liz Gilbert or a few people. But so there's a lot of misconceptions around that. That's a really good question. And I think because I'm so, I have a hashtag called Real Motherfucking Life, because I embrace that so much. There's not that many that people have about me.
I love your Justa as well. I think you're so real with your, getting rid of the I'm just and you also say it, just a waitress, just a yoga teacher, just
It's tough, Emily, but it's really, really important that we don't do that to ourselves or other people or our children.
And so one question we ask people is, you know, we talk about it as, I don't know if it's the same there, but when, you know, when you have a kid and you become like Charlie's mom, or here when you go to the doctors, they just call you mom, or, you know, teachers, mom, you don't have a name anymore. And so, you know, I think we can get trapped by like, you become I'm just Maisie's mom.
Yeah.
And we want to know who you are outside of just Charlie's mom.
I love that question. I mean, you guys are you are asking such delightful questions. So first, my son's 4, so your kids are older, so I haven't had as much experience in the world of school. And then school shut down halfway through the year, right? So I have like 1.5 years of preschool. And I sent my son to this preschool that's right next to my apartment. That's rich people preschool. I was like, I joke, I'm like, well, I probably wasn't joking. I'm like the poor one here, you know? I mean, really, like, I live in LA, right? So it's like the millionaires and their kids. But it's so close. I can like throw a rock, and it's literally the building right next door. So, and it's beautiful, and I sent them. And so that school was very much like, Jen, like there was none of that, you know, losing your identity.
Okay.
But with the other moms, yeah, like a lot of times I'm like, I don't know who that is. They're like, oh, I'm Sophia's mom. So there's that. And then at the doctor's, not so much. I do think it happens, but I think because my son is young, I haven't been out in the mom world as much to experience it. But I do think I'm unique in a sense, maybe not, but it's something that I feel good about, is that I do my best, and I promised this before I had Charlie at 41, that I wouldn't lose my identity. That yes, I would be a mom, but I wouldn't lose who I am. And I think I've done a really good job at that. Sometimes too good of a job. Sometimes I'm like, man, I'm a shit mom. Like I'm too much still independent. And but I think that was one of the gifts of having my son older, and at not having the clarity of if I wanted children. We're like, well, if I do this, I'll tell you this, I'm going to stay me as best as I can.
So I was going to say, there's a counter argument for that though as well, of you teach your children by example that you have to put yourself first in life. You need to be okay. If you're not okay,
absolutely,
you can't
and
make sure anybody else is okay. So I think that's a wonderful gift you've given Charlie.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it's so interesting because the time we're recording this, you know, we're in a pandemic, but like a year ago, who would have thought this? But I would travel all the time, and sometimes he came, most times he didn't. Yeah. And lately, when he was a baby, he came. But there was guilt. And then I thought, but no, one day, you know, or even now, he's going to go, that's my mom. And I was doing something. And I'm not saying that, like, if you stay at home, that doing something, busyness equals worthiness, but he will look at me and say, she didn't lose her sense of self. And that might not happen until he's an adult. Yeah. But it'll teach him.
I don't know, but well, I was going to say, my daughter was 2, and I was doing, because I'm an actress, I was doing a show, and it was a children's show, so she got to come and see. And I'd come out from the stage and I sang a song, and she stood up at the front of the stage and pointed to me in front of all the audience and went, that's my mom.
Oh, like my
that.
God.
And she was 2, I know. So I had to go backstage and, she's beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Fell apart and cried. But I do think you're showing them, and in whatever capacity that is, whatever fulfills you as a person and whatever makes you feel right and full as a person, you are showing your child that is what you need to do. You need to live in your purpose and your happiness. So yeah, I think it's wonderful that you're doing that.
And I don't think there's a greater moment when they do see that in you. And maybe, you know, Charlie's not quite old enough yet, but Maisie heard some of the mixed tracks of the new songs we wrote the other day, and she's like,
I love it.
You know, Mommy, I can't believe you wrote that. It's amazing. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so great that we can have that conversation.
And I just want to be really clear, you know, because I don't want anyone to misunderstand that I'm saying that it's like your accolades or like your work or what you're doing at all. It's simply the sense of you stay true to who you are. And don't come, you know. So Emily's been to my workshop, and I say, there's a question I asked that I heard Wayne Dyer ask, 15 years ago, who would you be if nobody told you who you were? And that really is my goal with that is so that we bust out of that just a box. I'm just a mom. I'm just a podcaster. I'm just a waitress. And often I would ask that question, and then I talk about the just a box, and I would say the just a mom. And without fail, women start crying, the tears. I see them with their eyes closed and tears falling, because many women, especially if their kids are a bit older, have been in that role for a long time where they have felt like, I am just a mom. Now, it's a huge honor to be quote unquote just a mom, but they've like let go of all the other things. I don't even know anymore what brings me joy besides my kids, it's that. So I'm not talking necessarily like you don't have to go write a book or be in a show or start a podcast, but it's, have you stayed true to who you are, to your heart, to your own sense of self, or have you let it all go for the sake of your children?
Completely. Yeah. I hear that 100%. I was at drama school when I got pregnant, and so many of my family were like, you can't go and train to be an actress and raise a child. And I was like, listen, if I don't do one, or if I choose one, I'm not going to be okay. They have to live in tandem, because I can't choose. I have to be right.
I love it.
I knew I was like, if you choose, that's it. If I make that choice, I'm going to hate whichever one I don't.
Good for you. Good for you, because what I hear, if it was me, my fear would have been like, they're right, and I would have and I would have chosen one or the other, and then had a life of regret, and so good for you. That's really beautiful.
I spoke about it before in a podcast. I'd had an abortion 2 years previously, and it was a really tough decision, and I wasn't happy. I made that choice because I wanted to be an actor. So then I got pregnant 2 years later, and I was like, no, it didn't work out. As we said previously, we have the babies we're meant to have, and I completely believe that. So Ray was 100% meant to be my baby, 100%. It's really strange, but yeah. So that's that. But thank you, Jen.
It's beautiful. Yeah, no, it's a beautiful thing, when you I remember when I had already met Emily, but I was traveling. My career didn't really start until I was 35. I had been a waitress and miserable, and I was traveling everywhere, and I was doing really well. And finally, I'm like, and so when I got pregnant with Charlie at 40, some people were like, well, how are you going to keep doing what you're doing? Well, how? Because I don't have a traditional job where a lot of moms, if they work in an office or whatever, they're a teacher. I travel for a living. And all I said was, watch me. Inside, I'm like, I don't know. Hashtag watch me. And that became my thing. And I still do it. People go, even now dealing with reinvention, like, how am I going to feed my family? Because I lost all my income when live events were canceled. Even though I don't know, I go, watch me. So it's like me telling myself, but it reminded me, you were a lot younger. I think you said you were 22 when you had
I was 23 when I got pregnant. 24 when I had her, yes. So I was quite young.
But for someone to say, basically, or many people to say, like, well, you have to choose. You can't do both. And you essentially went, watch me. And here you are. And we're watching you.
If you know me, Emily will say I'm quite a watch me sort of person.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, she's very watch me sort of person. Well, Sally, we should probably start wrapping up. Jen, it is gorgeous as always to see you, and I can't wait to see what you do next, because I had hoped to go to Italy next year, so we'll have to see what happens in May.
I'm really grieving. I'm really, really grieving that, and it's painful. It really, really is. On many levels, on the losing the income, yes, but the community and the sisterhood and it gives me life. It really does. So on many, many levels, it's a tough time, but I'm not dead.
And we're going to watch you. We're going to watch with close eyes.
When you said I can't wait to see what you do next, that's actually like a lot. People say it to me all the time, and all of a sudden I'm like, what am I going to do? Everyone's asking. Reinvention. I don't know what that's going to look like. We shall see. But reinvention in the time of coronavirus and figuring out, how do we not only survive but thrive in this really fucking weird time.
Yeah.
Weird time.
And that was the wonderful Jen Pastiloff. You can find out more about her workshops, her book, and everything else that she's up to at www.jenniferpastiloff.com. And you can also follow her on socials at Jen Pastiloff on Instagram and Twitter.
You can join the Good Enough Mums Club by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching Good Enough Mums Club. We'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button for the podcast, rate and review wherever you listen. And if you know a mum who'd like this, please do tell them about it.
If the stories in this podcast resonated with you or made you think or even just reassured you that you are doing okay, because believe me, babes, you absolutely are, then make sure you check out our other episodes available to listen now.
Thanks so much for listening. See you soon.
Bye.
How will I ever be good enough? When will the loneliness fade? When will it fade away? Why does it have to be so tough? Hard as I try, I'll never be good enough.